Hi, it's Jeff Drunken Cyclist. I'm here again with my buddy Christophe Briciel, who is in Tavel, I believe, today. We're going to taste a few more wines and talk a little bit about his journey across France. So I'm all set with my Chateauneuf du Pape shirt. Ready to drink some Chateauneuf and some Tavel. So Christophe, why don't you tell everybody where you are right now?
Indeed, I am sitting at the tower of the Prieuré de Montezargues, a priory dating back to 1199, where we are still today only making one wine, which is Tavel Rosé. So I was in Châteauneuf du Pape earlier today, and I started my
Are you there? Uh-oh, you're breaking up. Hi, it's Jeff Drunken Cyclist here again with my buddy Christophe Bristiel, making his way across the southern part of France by bike, visiting all of the wineries, in fact, owned by the Richard family. And where are you today, Christophe?
Well, I started earlier today in Châteauneuf du Pape at Château-Lannert, where I am usually based. Hey, here you go. Reminds me of home. And it was only a very short ride today because all I had to do was to cross the Rhone River. And I'm on my way west as I'll be crossing France over the next 3 days to reach the first estate in Bordeaux. So right now I'm in Tavel. I'm sitting at the tower of the historic Prieuré de Montezargues, an old priory dating back to 1199, where still today we only make one wine, which is Tavel Rosé.
And tell me a little bit about Tavel Rosé. What kind of what are the grapes that goes into this wine, and why only rosé?
It's interesting because indeed, Tavel is, as far as I know, the only the only village that can only make rosé. So if you want to call a wine Tavel, it has to be rosé. The reason for that is it's difficult really to know why in 1936, when Tavel was created the day after Châteauneuf du Pape, which is the oldest AOC, Appellation d'origine contrôlée in France, why it was only rosé, because you could make white or even red here, but they would be pale reds anyway, because the soils here are very sandy and poor.
Oh, no. Ready? Hi, it's Jeff Drunken Cyclist. I'm here with my buddy Christophe Bristiel again, who's making his way across the southern part of France, visiting all the wineries of the Richard family. He started a couple days ago up in Beaujolais, and now he's moved south. So Christophe, tell us where you are and a little bit about the place where you're standing.
Indeed, I first crossed the Rhone up in Lyon, and I made my way on the left bank all the way to Châteauneuf du Pape, where I stayed last night at Château-Lannert. And I crossed the Rhone again, but this time going west. I'm starting my trip across France all the way to Bordeaux at the Atlantic Ocean. I am right now sitting at the top tower of the Prieuré de Montezargues, a historic priory with the first written record going back to 1199. And this prieuré is in Tavel, the only village in France where you can only make rosé.
So what's the, we both got I think you have a bottle there, but so here we have.
Absolutely.
And tell me a little bit more about this wine. Why only rosé, and what type of varieties go into the wine?
Well, first, the second part of your question, the grapes. Even so, technically, we are not in Provence anymore, as we just on the other side of the Rhone. We are very much in Provence. It's only a couple of minutes, literally, from Châteauneuf du Pape, as the crow flies, I think you say. So the grapes are very much the same as in the rest of the south of the Rhone Valley. The king here is Grenache. Here we have Grenache in the 4 colors of Grenache, actually. The first grapes that we picked this year on the 25th of August was Grenache Gris, gray Grenache. We have a little bit of Grenache Rose, Grenache Blanc, but of course, the main grape in Tavel, like in the rest of the south of the Rhône Valley, is Grenache. The secondary grapes are Cinsault, which is the main grape that you find in Rosé de Provence. And this is a bit of a specialty for us here in the Prieuré de Montezat. We have a high proportion of white grapes. It's around 20% of the blend is white. And the main grape is Clairette. And to the first part of your question, why only rosé is it's difficult to know actually, because the appellation dates back to 1936. It was actually created just the day after Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And there's probably two reasons for it. One, I would say political, in the sense that the owners at the time divided the world in two. In Tavel, you can only make rosé, whereas in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, you're not allowed to make rosé. It's red and a little bit of white. But then there is, of course, a terroir reason. The fact that here the soils are very, very sandy, and it's very, very appropriate to make light-colored wines. It's probably true to say that back in 1199, the monks didn't make rosé as we know it. They were probably making what the English call claret, so pale red wine.
Okay, so do you want to why don't we taste through this one, and then we'll move on to the Châteauneuf-du-Pape wines?
Absolutely.
So this has long been a favorite of mine, and you once told me, I believe, that there is a scale of the color that is allowed in Tavel, and if I'm not mistaken, this is on the lighter end of that scale. Is that right?
Indeed. Another peculiarity of Tavel, I believe it's the only rosé appellation in the world with a minimum color intensity, which means it's actually measured by a spectrometer. If there's any doubt, the scale is from 0 to 10, and the minimum color intensity in Tavel is 0.5. And yes, indeed, I would say that Prieuré de Montezargues is on the lighter side. It's more, you could call it more modern, as we have limited the amount of time of skin contact during maceration. Actually, my colleagues are still working the press of the harvest of today as we speak, Jeff, and we are on the lighter side, indeed, on the modern side, but we are very much respecting the spirit of the appellation.
But still, when compared to, for example, some of the rosés of Provence, it's quite dark as compared to those Provence.
Absolutely, some of the rosés, particularly the last few years, particularly in the US market as well as here in France, have become almost transparent, to be honest. And this is not at all the philosophy of Tavel.
No, so I like I said, this has long been one of my favorites, and it's just a beautiful, a lot of strawberry, a little bit of maybe watermelon, but just a beautiful,
absolutely,
beautiful wine.
Absolutely, it's very cherry, crushed strawberry. You have some very interesting pivoine floral notes, and it's really a gastronomic rosé. I would say Prieuré de Montezargues Tavel is a Tavel to eat with, rather than just what we call here rosé de piscine. So a rosé where you could easily add some ice cubes in it. This is not, I think it would be very disrespectful to our Tavel rosé.
No, it's wonderful, and as we mentioned the other day with the Château des Tours, I think it can handle a wide variety of cuisines, because there's this is going to sound tacky, but I always think of the French word as little corset. There's a little bit of a body to it that you just
yes,
it really can handle. I mean, I think it could handle up to I think this would be great from the American perspective with grilled hamburgers, for example. I mean, just
no, for sure, absolutely. And what is amazing too with this wine is its aging capability. I mean, I've been banging my head ever since I've been working for the Richard family about trying to showcase mature Montezargues Tavel, because they age really, really beautifully, as some wonderful white wines actually. Just a few weeks ago, we conducted here a vertical tasting, The estate was purchased by the Richard family in 2003. So we tasted all the vintages made since then, and the vintages, for example, like 2004, were absolutely amazing still today.
Mm. And as you know, I do a tasting of American rosés every spring, and so I have to ask
Yes.
the question. So since they don't make red wine in Tavel, I'm assuming that this rosé is an intentional rosé, or what I call a true rosé. So it's not a saignée, it's not a blend of white, red, and white.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point you bring out, Jeff. This is not a byproduct. This is everything is made here in the vineyard, and of course during vinification, to make Tavel rosé. So vineyard management, the grape composition, the time of when we pick, all of this, and of course in the vinification, so the time on skin, the control of temperature, the amount of batonnage to bring some broadness to the wine. All of this is very, very specific to Montezarc Tavel.
And it's lovely. I mean, again, it's one of my favorite rosés, and pretty widely available, I think, in the U.S., right?
Yes, indeed.
Wine.com, does the Wine.com carry this one too?
Very much so. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, my good old friend Michael Osborne is a big fan of the property.
Okay, so I think we're going to move on to Les Cassagne de la Nerte. Is that right? The Côte
Yeah,
d'Or.
absolutely. We can start with the red. So we are going back to the other side of the Rhône, to what I like to call my baby La Nerte, or my everyday Chateau La Nerte, so very appropriate for Thursday lunchtime for you, Jeff, and Thursday evening for me. This is a vineyard which is just less than 10 miles north of Châteauneuf-du-Pape, just on the other side of the old Roman town of Orange. And there we have a significant vineyard of what I would call very typical Southern Rhône, Côte du Rhône. It's in a very small village appellation with a very specific environment. It's called Massif du Chaux. So the vineyard is on the south side of a hill, the Huchot Hill. And this is actually what gives the name to this wine. Les Cassagne is an old Provençal word. It's not even French. It's an old Provençal word. It means oak tree. And the reason for that is that the vineyard is surrounded on three sides by a wonderful green oak tree forest. And this is brings a lot of freshness. The environment is what we call garrigue. So you have a wild thyme, wild rosemary, wild laurel that grow everywhere around the vineyard. And this is what gives the name to Les Cassagne de la Nerte.
And is this a relatively new production for the Richard family?
Yes, the vineyard has changed a bit. It was partly owned by the family since the 80s, but it's been in full ownership since 1991. But we've made a lot of changes the last 5 years in the vineyard. My colleagues on the tractor. They are bringing the stems away from today's harvest as we destem everything here in Tavel. But back to Les Cassagne. Yeah, we've made a lot of changes to the vineyard. We expanded it the last year, and today it's we have almost 70 hectares, 70. So I never know in acres, but it's like just short of 200 acres. So it's quite significant. But it's all of it is in the Massif du Chaux appellation.
Mm. And but it's all made at Château La Nerte, is that right?
No, it's actually made at the winery, right at the bottom of the vineyard. So it's around 10 miles away.
Oh, okay.
It's made by the same team with the same philosophy. One thing we didn't mention, Jeff, is all the wines we are tasting today And the ones that Domaine Richard produces here in the south of the Rhone are certified organic. As a matter of fact, we've been certified organic at Château-Lanière since 1998, so 22 years. So we've really been pioneers in that front. And Les Castagnes is also certified organic, which means we apply the same philosophy across all the vineyards that we own and operate.
Okay, well, let's give this one a taste.
Yes.
Oh, wow, another rich fruit. Right out. I just opened this right before we started chatting. It's already
right. If you just without smelling further, I think for me it's just this the way I described you, the garrigue, this environment. No, I can feel it in my bottle, in my glass already.
Yeah, yeah.
Those spices. Yeah.
Right, the spices come in right at the end, and good fruit up the
absolutely
front. And no, it's fantastic. And the varietal makeup on this one is
quite typical for the region, dominated by Grenache, around give or take a few percentage, 60%, 60 Grenache, followed by Syrah. So that spiciness is this 25% Syrah, and the balance is split between Mourvèdre and Cinsault. We stopped using oak completely for Les Castagnes de Lanière because we think that by using concrete tanks, it really respects the fruit, the brightness of Grenache when it's ripe and fine.
But the concrete will give you some more of that complexity, that micro-oxygenation that you just don't get from steel, right?
That's right, exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's a lovely wine. Do you know what it retails for about in the U.S.?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. It's also widely available. I think what is important to note is, most of the wines available. I think you wrote something about Negos a couple of days ago, Jeff. Most of the wines available in the US are large brands, significant brands that are typically, and of course, some of them are absolutely delicious, but they are blends of many vineyards. So a lot of those wines are, I would say, made more in the winery rather than the vineyard. Whereas for Les Castagnes de Lanière, it's a single vineyard with its own identity. So I like to say that it's a Côte du Rhône with a sense of place. You could not make Les Castagnes de Lanière with other plots.
So all four varieties are planted in the same vineyard, and are they separated? Or
yes, actually,
is it a field blend? Or are they different blocks?
We have so the older part of the vineyard was planted in the late 1960s by my good friend Alain Dugas, who was the winemaker and the manager at Château-Lanière for many years, and he was actually living at the Les Castagnes de Lanière vineyard. So he planted the oldest vines back in the late 1960s, and indeed some of those are what we call field blends of Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre.
Okay, all right. Are we ready to move on to the white Lanière?
Yeah, or maybe Jeff, as we're tasting reds, why don't we do like the Burgundy, where we finish with the whites? We move to the red CDP.
I've always thought that you were a Burgundian living in Châteauneuf because I know your affinity for Burgundy. An Alsatian, a Burgundian from Alsace living in Châteauneuf.
Exactly. Having made wine in Chile, but that's another story. Right.
So we're going back to where you were yesterday, back to Châteauneuf.
Yes.
I was lucky enough to visit a couple years ago, I guess now. So why don't you tell me a little bit about, the long history of Château-Lanière?
Yes, indeed. Very much like the property where I'm at right now. Château-Lanière is one of the oldest property in the region. The first written record of Château-Lanière is from 15 1860. We don't know exactly when the estate was founded, but this is the first written record. That's when it changed hands, and we know that the cellar was already in existence at that moment. So we've been making wine at Château Lannert for at least 500 years.
And I guess many people know the story of Châteauneuf-du-Pape. There are 13 varieties that are able to be put into the wine. And I believe all 13 are grown there at Lannert. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. We are one of the very few estates still today growing and fermenting, and in many cases co-fermenting the 13 grapes.
But this is, again, predominantly Grenache. Is that right?
So the blend tends to change year by year because of the last. If I look at the last decade, we've seen some significant change on how each of the individual grape has reacted to the climate change. And the yields have been up and down depending on the vintage. But yes, I would say the benchmark blend for our flagship wine, which is Château Lannert Red, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, is around 50% Grenache, so around half Grenache. And then we have quite a high proportion of Syrah, year in, year out, around 30%. And then Mourvèdre. We have one of the largest, if not the largest, single plot of Mourvèdre. We have a 7-hectare single plot of Mourvèdre planted on clay. And then we have a bit of all the other 10 grapes. I would say from the other 10, there are only 2 that have very specific single plots dedicated to them. It's Cinsault, again, and another grape which is much less known, which is Counoise. And of course, you have some whites. Vines dotted around the red plots.
And do any of those
so this is a blend.
Do any of the whites ever make it into the blend for the red?
Always. And so, for example, we have a few vines of Clairette on Lacroix. So on the highest part, which is Peeblestone, we have some 90-year-old Clairette that are dotted around Grenache. Why or how is difficult to know because we don't have records about what happened 90 years ago in detail when they replanted that particular plot. But it's very interesting. And of course, it's very much what happens in Côte-Rôtie, where you co-ferment some Viognier with Syrah. It's the same for us. For example, in 2016. It was such a warm vintage. We decided to co-ferment all the Bourboulenc, which is one of our red grape. We co-fermented it completely with red Grenache to bring some acidity and freshness.
Because the heat, the Grenache is perhaps a little bit overripe or a little low in acidity because of the heat.
Exactly. It's more, the ripeness. It's more about the acidity. Yes.
Right. So what do you? So I know we were talking through email, I think, and you said you had an 81 Châteauneuf last night, or was it 2 nights ago?
That's right. Yeah, as a reward to our little detour on the top of the Mont Ventoux. So yesterday we cycled about 130 kilometers, and we climbed the Géant de Provence, the Mont Ventoux. I don't know if you can see it. Actually, it's in the distance there.
Yeah,
all the way.
Right there, right just to the left of those trees.
That's right. So anyway, this is the highest standalone mountain in France, and it's the highest point of Provence. But back to your question, as a reward, we decided we thought we deserved to open a very, very special bottle. And 1981 was amazing. It's a very underrated vintage. Not as famous as 79 or 82, but it was absolutely amazing. And back to your first comment about my personal taste, as well as some of the comments around Château Lannert, is one of the I think very nice thing that our good old friend Mr. Robert Parker wrote about us when he was still coming to Château Lannert at the end of August every year. He said that Chateau Lannert is the most Burgundian of the Châteauneuf-du-Pape. And when you tasted this 1981, I think it was a testimony to that. What made this wine so special was the finesse of the tannins, a delicacy. It was velvety, and of course, it had lost a bit of the power that you find is in this young vintage, but it gained a lot in terms of the finesse of the tannins, the delicacy of the mouthfeel. It was just singing in the glass.
No, and I obviously haven't tasted as many Lannerts as you have, but I've noticed that about the tannins that almost every Lannert that I've had, I'm trying to think if there's an exception to this, but right out of the bottle, they're very drinkable. Whereas some Chateauneufs, you need to lay down for 5-10 years at a minimum, just so that those tannins can soften up a bit, because they can be quite harsh, particularly on the back end, a little even bitter. But Lannert,
that's right.
The tannins are always very supple. Still great aging potential, but not aggressive like some Chateauneufs that I've had.
I think it's a testimony to the fantastic terroir of Chateau Lannert. Because Chateau Lannert, you know, we talked about it, is one of the oldest, if not the oldest property in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So we've been making wine for a very long time there. We also have this a bit unusual grape composition that we described. We have quite a high proportion of Syrah and Mourvèdre, much more than the rest of the village. And the reason for that is that we have a natural freshness in the terroir. The reason the chateau was implemented there is we have a natural spring on the property, and which means that the water table is quite close to the ground, particularly on all the plots where we have the white grapes, as well as Syrah and Mourvèdre. So I think this contributes greatly to the finesse and the elegance that you kindly mentioned, Jeff.
No, I'm just tasting this. I mean, there's absolutely fantastic fruit, both on the nose and on the palate, but also that spiciness. And after about my third little sip, I started to get a little bit of that tannin on the back end, saying that this still has a long way to go. I don't think that, I mean, it's a 2016, but gosh, I think 10 years without a problem, probably more.
For sure.
Yeah, it's just.
And I would definitely pass it through carafe if I were to. Actually, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to refresh it a little bit and pass it through carafe before drinking it with my friend here from the Prieuré de Montézac when they finish pressing the harvest of the day.
No, it's really fantastic. And as much as I love Lannert Red, I have a real soft spot for the last wine, the Chateau Lannert Châteauneuf-du-Pape Blanc, which I might say is my absolute favorite white wine. Still wine, because I'm a fan of champagne, so I'll have to say still wine.
I know.
Still leave me a little.
I have a few bottles waiting for you, as you well know, in my home at La Baie des Anges in Vaison-la-Romaine, waiting for you when you can travel again.
Whenever that is. Hopefully it's going to be soon, because like many people,
yes.
my family is driving me crazy. I mean, in a good way, but I think they like me better when I'm not around as much. So talk to me a little bit about the Châteauneuf-du-Pape Blanc from Chateau Lannert.
Yes, well, first of all, it's a bit of a rarity, because the production overall in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, in the village, is 95% red, which means it's only 5% white. And even today, there are quite a few estates that don't produce white. For Chateau Lannert, it's a bit of a different story. It's still smaller than red, of course, but it's around 15% of our production, which is very significant for the appellation. And we've always been well known for our white wine. Actually, as we are such an old estate and the only true chateau in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, we have a lot of archives describing the history of the estate. And we know that in 1786, when we first shipped wine your way to North America, actually to your hometown, Jeff, to Philadelphia, to Philly, to a Mr. James Baker, négociant in Philadelphia in 1786, just a few years after the independence. At that time, the white of Lanert was sold at a premium over the red. So it was always very, very, very well known. So we have a very long history of making white wine at Lanert, and we continue this tradition today.
And this, like the red, is also a blend. But again, I believe Grenache plays, or Grenache Blanc in this case, of course, plays a major role here too. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's like the red. We have variations by vintage. This is 2018. The main grape, the one that for me gives the character, even if it's maybe not, it's not every year. It's the most important in pure percentage term, is Roussanne, which I think is the most delicate of the grape varieties we have here in the Rhone Valley, be it in the north, in Hermitage, for example, where it's associated with Marsanne. We don't have Marsanne in Châteauneuf. It's not one of the 13 grapes. But in this case here, Roussanne is associated with Grenache Blanc, indeed, as well as a little bit of Clairette and Bourboulenc. So you have 4 grapes here in this wine.
No, to me, and I said it kind of in the lead into this segment of our talk, but to me, this is pretty close to the top of white wine, available white wine. Of course, there's, I mean, not to go back to Burgundy too much, but there are some fabulous wines made there too, but I can no longer afford them. But, you know, I believe this is right around $60 in the US. And sure, it's not,
yes, that's correct,
everyday wine for most people, but certainly a weekend or special occasion wine. And I defy anybody who says they don't like white wine not to like this wine. It just the layers of complexity, the acidity that is certainly present but not overpowering. It is one of the more better balanced wines that I've ever had, and I just love it. And I think I've told you that over and over again. And so it's, I mean, to me, it's appropriate to end with this one because it's just a beautiful, beautiful wine. And
absolutely.
It takes me back to Châteauneuf, and my first time I visited there, I don't know if I didn't know you at the time, but I stopped at a little outside cafe and had my first ever glass of white Châteauneuf, and I was stunned. I just sat there and I couldn't move for a while. And since then, it's kind of been, you know, my thing. If I see any white Châteauneuf, I say, oh, because I know how rare it is, and it's I don't know if I've ever had a bad white Châteauneuf du Pape, because as you said, it's so rare. If you're going to make it, it's got to be something that is really near and dear to your heart, and so you're going to take care of it and make as a great a wine as you can. So I wish there were more, but maybe because there is so little that's why it's so good. I don't know.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for all those compliments. I'm blushing. I don't know if I'm red from the cycling in the sun or just from your compliments, but thank you very much. I think we share your enthusiasm, and we are very proud of our white indeed, and we like to drink it too ourselves.
So where are you off to tomorrow?
Right. Well, I have a long way across France. I'm starting straight west from here, so I have to cycle. I've decided to cycle through the Massif Central. So I'll be going through the Cévennes, the Causse, the Aubrac. So it will be it's going to be a long way because it's all small winding roads, and there's no flats. It's not like Houston, Jeff. It's everything is up and down, up and down, up and down. So yeah, let's see how I go. I hope to stop first thing tomorrow morning at the Pont du Gard, the very, very famous Roman aqueduct, which is actually just a couple of miles away from Tavel, and then make my way straight west all the way. Let's see. I'll keep you updated on how far I get every day, but I hope to make it to Bordeaux in the Entre-deux-Mers, which will be my first stop at Château Gantonnet. Where we produce Bordeaux wines in the 3 colors, red, white, and rosé. I hope to be there in 3 days.
Oh,
we'll see.
Yeah. So you're going 3 days without wine then? Is that allowed in France?
Don't worry, I'll find my way. This is France. There's always wine. But I
Right.
won't see. I don't think I will not see vineyards. That's for sure. In most of the parts, it's going to be more cows and sheep.
And you're gonna go through any of the gorges of the Cevennes, or?
Yes, no, absolutely. And les Gorges du Tarn, we should be the day after tomorrow, I think. We'll see.
Okay.
I'll send you some pictures, of course.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely get some of those up so everybody, all my readers can see that. But once again,
Thank you.
great talking to you, Christophe. We suffered through a little bit of technical difficulties, but it looks like we managed to get through that. So that was great. So, well, we'll be in touch, and hopefully we'll talk to you in a couple of days.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Merci beaucoup, Jeff.
Merci.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.